My name is Kayla, and a few years ago, my fiance and I bought a foreclosed home in a neighborhood people warned us about. The price was too good to pass up. We told ourselves that the stories were exaggerated, that the neighborhood would get better with time. We didn't know how wrong we were. It happened on a warm night around 2 in the morning. I was half asleep, lying in bed with the TV playing quietly. The house felt still, like everything was holding its breath. My fiance was still at work, so I was alone. The window beside my bed was barely a foot from my pillow. I could feel the draft from the frame, the cool air brushing against my face. That's when I heard it, a soft scratching. Not loud, just enough to make the hairs on my arms rise. I thought it was squirrels at first. We had trees everywhere, so I tried to ignore it. But then I heard voices, low, garbled murmurs, not like someone talking from a distance, but like someone leaning against the glass. I didn't understand any of the words, just the tone, agitated, impatient. Before I could sit up, something metal scraped along the window frame, slowly, as if whoever was outside was testing it, seeing if it would open without making a sound. My heart was beating so hard I could feel it in my throat. I yelled that I was calling the police, hoping to scare them away. The scratching stopped. Silence. A silence so complete that even the TV suddenly sounded too loud. The officers arrived quickly. Their flashlights cut through the yard as they walked the perimeter. No one, no footprints, not even a tool left behind. They told me it was probably an animal, or maybe the wind against the siding. They were calm, polite, and tried to reassure me, but I could see it in their eyes. They thought I was exhausted, paranoid, maybe just nervous being alone. I thanked them and watched from the doorway as they got into their cruisers, and then their radios lit up, another attempted break-in just a few blocks away. They sped off, sirens silent, disappearing down the street. When the sound of their engines faded, the house seemed to grow heavier. The shadows felt darker. The windows felt thinner. I got back into bed and called my fiance. He stayed on the line, talking to me to keep my mind from spiraling. I focused on the hum of the TV, the faint static in the call, anything but the window beside me. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, moving across the ramp leading to our backyard shed. The wood echoed with each step, and I let out a shaky breath of relief. I thought he was home. I hung up and walked toward the back door. My phone rang again almost instantly. It was him, telling me he was still miles away. I froze. Somewhere outside, whoever had been walking stopped moving. The air felt thick, like the house itself was waiting to see what I'd do next. I called emergency services again, hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. This time, the police and my fiance arrived at the same time. Their flashlights swept through the yard, the trees, the shed, and then farther toward the edge of the woods. They found him. A man tucked just beyond the tree line, covered in welts and barely able to stand. He'd disturbed a wasp nest trying to run and had nowhere left to go. He'd been jumping from property to property all night, always slipping away right before officers arrived. That night, he was one step too slow. Paramedics came. The police handled the rest. We didn't ask questions. We didn't want to. We moved a few weeks later to a different neighborhood, one where the windows are thicker and I can't hear the outside world quite as clearly. But even now, sometimes when I'm trying to sleep, I swear I can hear it again, that slow testing scrape on the window frame, like someone trying to see if I'm still awake. I was about 14 the night it happened. It was a weekend, late enough that the neighborhood had gone quiet. I was in my room, headset on, pizza box beside me, playing Call of Duty online with my best friend. My parents never liked leaving me home alone at night. They had to drive out to the airport to pick up my grandparents. My older brother was at a party. So, for the first time in a long time, I had the house to myself. I remember thinking it was the perfect night. No rules, no curfew, nobody interrupting me. Just my game, my friend, and the endless glow of the TV screen. Then, around 2 in the morning, the doorbell rang. I didn't even panic at first. I thought it was just my parents. Maybe they forgot the garage remote. I got up, walked through the hallway, and reached the front door. and that's when I stopped. You know that feeling your body has before your mind understands? That heavy, sinking instinct that whispers, "Don't do it." Mine hit me instantly. I didn't know why. I just knew something was wrong. Before I even touched the handle, the night erupted. The person outside began slamming their fists into the door, not knocking, pounding, hard, uneven, frantic, the kind of hits that shake the frame and vibrate through the floor. Then came the shouting. I didn't recognize the voice. I couldn't make out every word, but the message was clear: let them inside. I froze. My controller slid out of my hand and hit the carpet. My heart was pounding so loudly, I thought the person outside could hear it. I grabbed the house phone, hands trembling, and dialed emergency services. I tried to speak, but my voice kept cracking. Even the operator sounded distant, like she was talking to me from another world. My friend was still in my headset, asking if I was okay. I couldn't even respond. I called my parents after that. They told me to stay calm, lock every door, and keep talking to the operator. So I did. Minutes passed, or maybe seconds, I couldn't tell, and the pounding stopped. The silence was so sudden, so complete, it felt unnatural, like the world was holding its breath. I backed away from the door thinking maybe it was finally over, maybe they left. I almost believed it, until the window exploded with noise. The glass rattled violently. Something heavy slammed against it again and again. Each impact sounded like thunder inside the house. That's when the shouting returned. Closer, louder, desperate. I thought the window was going to shatter. I remember my legs shaking so badly I had to sit on the floor. Then, out of nowhere, another noise cut through the chaos. Voices, movement, my older brother's voice. He'd come home early with a couple of friends. They'd seen someone outside, right as another hit slammed against the glass. Everything happened at once. They shouted. The intruder yelled back. I could hear people moving, struggling. Then, a siren in the distance. Police arrived almost instantly after that. When they spoke to the man, it became obvious that he wasn't thinking clearly. He was shivering, barefoot, breathing hard, and clutching a decorative statue from our porch, the same one he had been using to hit the window. To this day, I don't know how that glass held. Emergency responders were called to check on him. They wrapped him in a thermal blanket, gave him warm water, and helped him sit down. One of them told my brother quietly that if the man had stayed outside in that condition for much longer, the cold could have seriously harmed him. Later that night, his parents came. They apologized over and over. They were shaken, confused, embarrassed. It became clear that whatever led him to our house wasn't something he planned. It was the aftermath of a poor decision and a long, frightening walk in the cold. We didn't press charges. There was no need. We never saw him again. But even now, years later, whenever the doorbell rings past midnight, my heart jumps back to that moment, standing barefoot in a dark hallway with the sound of fists on the door and a stranger on the other side begging to be let in. My name is John, and this happened sometime last year. I was renting a small house in an old mining town in Appalachia. It was the kind of place where everyone either worked long shifts or slept strange hours, and the streets were quiet at night. I lived alone. One of the first warm nights of spring, around 4 a.m, I woke up to the sound of my doorknob turning. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake. People got lost in that town all the time, and the houses looked similar in the dark, but the sound didn't stop. It wasn't a casual twist or a confused jiggle. It was steady, determined. I didn't have a peephole, no window facing the door. The only option was to approach it from the inside. I called out, trying to sound calm, telling whoever was there that they had the wrong house. Silence for half a second. Then, the door rattled, hard. It shook in the frame, as if someone grabbed it with both hands and pulled, again and again. I repeated myself, louder this time, trying to warn them that I was calling for help. What came back wasn't words. It was a sound, low, broken, like a half snarl, half-grown, something human trying to sound anything but human. It was close enough to the door that I could feel it through the wood. I backed away, heart pounding, grabbed my phone, and called emergency services. My voice was shaky, but I managed to tell them what was happening. They told me to stay inside and not engage. Minutes crawled by. Then came a knock, 3 calm taps. I opened the door only a few inches and saw a police officer. He asked a few questions, then told me to close the door again and stay put. I turned off the lights and waited in the dark, gripping the only object I felt I could defend myself with, a kitchen knife. For 20 minutes, there was nothing. Just quiet breathing from my own lungs and the hum of the refrigerator. Then, something tapped against one of the side windows. Not a polite knock. Something like a fingernail dragging slowly across the glass. I shouted that law enforcement was already there. Immediately after, there were voices outside, commands being shouted into the night. "Get on the ground! Hands where we can see them!" What followed was a sound I'll never forget. A sharp, high cry, painful, panicked, almost animalistic, and then footsteps, radios, and doors slamming. A few minutes later, there was another knock. The same officer stood there, but he looked different this time, pale, shaken, like he had seen something he couldn't explain in a report. He told me the suspect had been detained and that the situation was under control. He didn't want to say more, and I didn't ask. The next day, I ran into him again in town. Small communities don't leave room for anonymity. Out of uniform, he seemed more relaxed but still unsettled when he recognized me. He hesitated before speaking. All he said was that the man they found had given them a fake name, taken from an old horror movie, and that he didn't seem to understand where he was or what he was doing. They believed it was a case of someone severely intoxicated or suffering from a medical or psychological crisis. Even the officer didn't know how long the man had been wandering around before trying to force his way into my house. We never saw him again. I moved out a few months later into a busier town with neighbors on every side. But sometimes, late at night, when everything goes silent, I still imagine the sound of that doorknob turning, slow and deliberate, like the darkness outside knows exactly where I live.